thick pain. A plexiglass, still detoxing from his moon-dusted crystal habit. He admitted selling Carmi, Rossi's, fermented goat's milk, but swore he never peddled anything more nefarious. Under cross-examination, he confessed to being a bit fuzzy on the details, having been in a higher vibrational state at the time. Then came the emotional testimony from Cody's longtime friend, Becky Lloyd. Becky, a no-nonsense goat farmer, recounted a conversation where Cody, frustrated with Barnaby's incessant sniffles, had exclaimed, "Honestly, sometimes it would be easier if he just spontaneously composted." The defense pounced, pointing out that Becky had failed to mention spontaneous composting in her initial statement, to which Becky replied, "Well, it sounded less dramatic then, didn't it?" Allie Staking, Cody's childhood best friend, testified about Barnaby's Valentine's Day near miss with Cody's algae spread. She described Barnaby's reaction as more of a funny anecdote, like a particularly aggressive food coma. Her testimony inadvertently cast doubt on the poisoning attempt theory, making it sound more like a slapstick culinary mishap. The courtroom held its breath for the arrival of Robert Josh Grossman, the man Cody allegedly had an affair with. Josh, a simple handyman with a heart of gold and a crippling fear of public speaking, shuffled to the stand. His voice, thick with a southern drawl, was barely audible. He confessed to loving Cody, his sincere, almost childlike declarations, a stark contrast to Cody's purely professional texts, which were projected onto a giant screen. "I have a crazy dream," one read. "I divorce and come up with millions and millions. We buy Midslope and live in guest house and rent out the huge house as a big event center. Deal." Josh interpreted this as a romantic proposal. Cody meant it as a business plan for an event space she'd run. He broke down when reading a text from Cody. "Hang in until Friday. Life is going to be different. I promise." Friday, of course, was the day Barnaby died. Josh believed it was Cody's subtle hint that she would finally confess her love to him. He then recounted Cody's bizarre question after Barnaby's death. "Have you ever silenced anyone, specifically with garden gnomes?" He thought she was asking for advice for a novel she was writing. The prosecution rested. The defense, after a tense whisper huddle, declared, "Your Honor, the defense rests." The courtroom gasped. Cody, ever the planner, had apparently decided that the prosecution's case was so comically flawed it would unravel on its own. Then, a new mystery began to unfold, far from the hallowed halls of Summit Peak County. Part 4. The eccentric vanishing of Nana Willowbrook. Meanwhile, in a sprawling, picturesque but slightly dilapidated vacation rental called Mill Pond Manor, nestled in the scenic hills outside of Hickory Hollow, an entirely separate, equally absurd drama was playing out. This was the domain of Nana Willowbrook, an eccentric, free-spirited woman famous for her spontaneous spiritual retreats and an impressive collection of oddly human-like garden gnomes. The manor, which Nana rented out for events, was currently hosting a wedding party. On the fateful Friday, Nana had been enjoying the festive atmosphere, particularly a spirited debate with the groom's aunt about the healing properties of Moonrocks. Carlos Chico Flores, the manor's perpetually flustered handyman, was performing late-night repairs on a leaky faucet near Nana's cottage. Chico, a genuinely kind soul, was also prone to catastrophic accidental mishaps. That night, as he fumbled with a wrench, he accidentally and very noisily knocked over Nana's prize-winning, very lifelike yoga meditation garden gnome. Norman, a priceless family heirloom, shattered into 1,000 porcelain pieces. Nana, hearing the clatter from her cottage, interpreted it as a cosmic vibration, a clear sign from the universe that it was time to begin her annual Silent Mountain retreat. As was her custom, she left immediately and without a word, packing only a meditation cushion and a large jar of her homemade elderberry jam. Chico, peering into the cottage, saw what he believed was a horrific crime scene. Blood. The elderberry jam, which he had accidentally knocked over, was splattered across the floor in a nearby cabinet. Missing bedding. Nana, in a fit of inexplicable affection, often wrapped Norman in a small blanket during cold nights. Chico, convinced he'd killed Norman and needed to dispose of the evidence of his clumsiness, wrapped the porcelain shards in the blanket. Tire tracks. Chico's beat-up pickup truck. Scuffle marks. The undeniable scuff marks from Chico clumsily trying to haul the blanket-wrapped Norman. Chico, in a cold sweat, bundled the body, Norman's fragments, into his truck. He drove to a remote area known for its spiritual energy and dense shrubbery, where he carefully buried Norman in a pile of rocks, a ritual he believed would release the gnome's spirit. The next morning, Amanda Willowbrook, Nana's earnest but slightly exasperated daughter, called 911. Nana hadn't shown up for her regular Sunday chakra alignment brunch. Amanda, rushing to the cottage, found the scattered jam and the missing bedding. "There seems to be blood all over her pillow," she cried, pointing at a jam-stained cushion. The wedding guests, a hilariously unhelpful bunch, focused on their artisanal cocktails, were interrogated. No one had seen anything unusual beyond the groom's aunt having a particularly animated discussion with a garden gnome. The police, baffled, deployed a relatively new crime-fighting tool, geofencing. They obtained a warrant to track all cell phones within a digital perimeter around Nana's cottage during the time of her disappearance. The results came back. One phone, belonging to Carlos Flores, had been pinging inside the cottage during the precise window of Nana's vanishing. This was a shock. Chico had been interviewed earlier, a mild-mannered, cooperative fellow, but now he was a prime suspect. A deep dive into Chico's Google search history revealed something unexpected: cougar and sexy lingerie videos and escorts for elderly women. Detectives concluded Chico had a fetish for older women. The sex videos they found on his phone were actually him recording himself performing a particularly difficult, contortionist-like plumbing maneuver that, out of context, looked highly suggestive. The cougar lingerie searches were for a specific type of cougar-themed wildlife documentary he wanted to watch, or perhaps a costume for a Wild West-themed birthday party. The police, now convinced they had their man, retrieved a discarded soda bottle from a restaurant table Chico had recently dined at. His DNA matched the DNA found on the bloody pillow, the jam-stained cushion. The net was closing. Chico was brought in for interrogation. He stuck to his story. He went to retrieve a ladder, accidentally backed over something he thought was a garden gnome, panicked, and then disposed of the evidence. But as the detectives pressed him with their circumstantial evidence, Chico, overwhelmed, began to crack. He admitted to drinking that night, to being clumsy, and to a vague sense of making a mistake with Norman. The detectives, firmly believing a human had been killed, misinterpreted his gnome-related grief as a confession to murder. In a stunning moment, Chico offered to lead them to her body. The journey took them deep into the Carrizo Plains. After several false starts, Chico finally pointed to a small, carefully arranged pile of rocks. "There, that's where Norman is," he cried, tears streaming down his face. The detectives dug. What they found were shattered porcelain fragments, bits of stained blanket, and Assortment of Nana's Bazaar, nature-themed art.